Bonus video number 3. I don't really know what to call this one, and I'm not real sure what all I can show of this, but let's get into this. So there's a website called Hazlitt, HAZLITT.net. I had never heard of this, but if you Google anything about the rodents, you ultimately, especially if you go in the image searches. So let me just show you how I find these things. Stand by. So you're welcome for that. So here I am. Sorry, accidentally hit stop. Here I am searching Frankie Roden. Okay. Typical shit, family tree, what have you. Scroll down a couple. Wait, what's that? The fuck is that? Scroll down. Here's another one. That is questionable. What the hell? So you click on them. There's the bigger picture. Like, what the fuck is that, right? Now it's the size of my screen, which, mind you, my monitor, not small, keyboard for reference. This is what I can best assume is a partial short story, partial truth. I'm not sure. It was published in January of 2017. So this is before the Wagners were arrested or even announced that they were the suspects they were looking for. It's called Murder on Union Hill Road. It is a somewhat true, but at the time would have been fictional retelling of the murder story. So basically, this is a story told in first person of a reporter coming to town to ask questions about the murder with a coworker or friend of hers. I haven't read the whole thing. I've just kind of skimmed it. So I'm just going to read you this one part. I've done this before, but I kind of wanted to do it on its own video. When I asked Kyle about the Roden massacre, he said, "No one cares about white trash." He said I was there to cover old news and suggested I write about something important like his deer farm. A farm where I raise deer and guys pay me to come shoot them. What are you, fucking retarded? You don't know what a deer farm is? Write about my dick, he said. It's only been 5 weeks though. Aren't you hurting? Aren't you scared? I said. I repeated what I told Alice on the plane, explaining that I was there to do a sort of feelingsy piece about how Pike Countyans were coping in the wake of a major tragedy. In response, Kyle dragged on a cigarette from one hand and chugged beer with the other, exhaling with a burp. When I pressed him for answers, a woman reached down from her perch on a golf cart to flick me in the head. "She do not like you," Kyle muttered. "Rich city girl like you," talking about Confederate flag decorated four-wheelers and shit. Like, what the fuck is this? Part 2. Hazlitt, part 2. In continuation of what I was reading in part 1, I kicked the muck off my shoes against a child-sized Confederate flag decorated four-wheeler and went to find someone who, unlike Kyle, was not so drunk. But the elderly woman tapping her cigarette into a Dr. Pepper, and the family crouched on their golf cart for a better view, and the men selling giant chrome engines near the deep fryer all said the same thing about the Rodens. No one worth anything associated with people like that. Onlookers warned me to prepare myself for extreme poverty. "Rich city girl like you," they said, shaking their heads. "One look at the crime scenes, you're going to get your butt kicked into your heart." "Blood?" I said. "No, garbage." "Did you know them?" I kept asking. "Hell no," they said. This next part is blowing my mind. Keep in mind, I'm from this area. This is ridiculous. Back on the US 23, red, white, and blue flashed in our rearview mirror. First of all, that's not true, because if you got pulled over by a trooper, it was all blue. "I can be a mean guy or I can be a nice guy," the trooper said when I rolled down my window. I smiled at myself in his reflective sunglasses and said I'd much prefer he be a nice guy, which is also not true. Troopers don't come up to your car wearing sunglasses. They take them off. He gave me a $90 seatbelt violation, then leaned against the car and asked where we were going. No, he wouldn't ask you afterwards. He'd ask you beforehand. "Piketon," I said. "Why?" I explained our purpose and he shook his head. "Bedbugs." "No, not that motel. I saw that one on TripAdvisor. We're booked at the Comfort Inn." "You better hurry," he added, scanning the sky. "Sun's about to set." He explained that it wasn't safe to go out at night in Piketon. We should go straight to our motel room and lock ourselves inside. Again, I thought this advice was predicated on killers being loose. But when I asked if that's what he meant, he scoffed. You mean the druggy family gotten themselves murdered? The trooper admitted that he didn't know much about that stuff or about the Roden case. They, quote, had BCI guys over from out of town handling that part. Okay, first of all, the troopers didn't have shit to do with this, and I'll tell you how I know. Also, this trooper in this story, said, quote, the people in Piketon are scrotbags. I nodded, reaching for my reporter's notebook. Scrotbags, as in scrotum. Okay, so the reason that I know that the troopers had nothing to do with this and weren't even aware of what was happening is because when I left my house this day, this came across originally as a murder of 7 children and 1 adult, so it was flipped. And like I said, I lived like a mile, like a road over from this, and they told us a killer was on the loose. I had an 11-month-old. My husband worked out of town. I snatched my child up, got my husband's gun, and went to my car. Shit, I'm going to have to do a part 3. Go over to that one. Didn't intend for this to be 3 parts, but we are on Hazlitt part 3. Again, that's 4. Can't control my thumb. Leave me alone. So, back to my story. The day that this happened, I need to just do a whole video on my story of what happened, but the reason that I know that troopers had nothing to do with this other than blocking roads and genuinely didn't understand what was going on with the exception of what the sheriff's deputies were telling the ones on the scene, I got pulled over this day. Leaving my house, trying to get to my father's house. I got pulled over for going 90 miles an hour on State Route 32, which at the time, the speed limit was 60. I think it still is 60. There is not a highway patrol post in Pike County. They are patrolled by Ross County, which is 1 north of Pike County. It's where Chillicothe, Ohio is. There's a whole nother thing with missing women in that city that you can look into as well. We might get into it on here. That kind of shit starts getting into some dangerous shit that I don't necessarily know that I want to talk about because people are still going missing over that shit. Ties in with Portsmouth too. Also something I would love to talk about, but I would like to live. So I got pulled over by a highway patrolman that day, a lieutenant, I believe. She pulled me over. I had my baby in the back. I had a loaded 45 laying in the passenger seat of my car that I did not have a license to have, and I was speeding heavily. I also did not grab my purse when I left my house. I did not have my driver's license on me. This woman could have taken me to fucking jail, but she didn't because she understood my panic. I told her my husband works out of town. I'm afraid. I don't know what's happening. I live right by this, and I just want to get to my dad's house. So she did not give me a ticket. She was very understanding. And I asked her, with all the things going on, do you know what's happening? Should I be afraid? And she said, honestly, hon, I couldn't tell you. We don't even get sheriff radio traffic unless we tune to it specifically. Now, whether she just didn't want to talk about it, I don't know. But even in the pictures that you see of the crime scenes, the only time there's a highway patrolman is sitting on the road blocking Union Hill, because here's a crime scene. There's not even them outside. These are BCI. Dana's house, BCI. These are sheriff cruisers. Sheriff, that is the sheriff. These are BCI. Chris's house, sheriff, BCI, all his cars. This is them closing Union Hill Road. This is a Piketon police car. That's a Piketon police officer. Road closure. All these are news vehicles. These are sheriff and an investigator. Came across this picture too. This is State Route 32. This is going into Piketon. This is them towing the road. All right, so summing up the Hazlitt thing, I don't know what the fuck that is, but I have questions. And it's been bugging me, and I'm the only one who's ever seen it apparently. So if anybody happens to know what that is, let me know. I don't fucking know. And honestly, I could reach out to the author and ask her. I don't want to. I'm not interested in what she has to say. If that's how she wrote about people from Pike County, she can just go ahead and get fucked. No. I've got zero tolerance for people that talk about us like these fucking backwards hillbillies. It pisses me off so bad. Because, yes, of course there are backwards hillbillies here. It's the fucking rural Midwest, sort of north end of the South. We're like a mixture of Southern and Midwestern culture here. And it's Appalachia. It is Appalachia. This is West Virginia. This is West Virginia is all this place is. Eastern Kentucky is Western West Virginia. This is all just what you think of, that stereotype when you think of West Virginia, the wild and wonderful whites. It's all over the place here, but it's not all of us. It's not all of us. There are a few of those, and they do tend to get attention drawn to them. And whether this family was white trash or not is not up for debate, because this family is not around to defend themselves, and they didn't deserve what they got, even if they were white trash. They didn't deserve this in the slightest. So that whole thing pissed me off. Really, really pissed me off. And I've never seen anything else written about it, but bro, just fuck her. Do you know how long I had to scroll to find a picture of a highway patrol vehicle at the mouth of Union Hill Road? Because it was Sheriff Piketon, Sheriff, 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 Piketon, Sheriff, Sheriff. So far, that is the only cruiser for an Ohio State Highway Patrol trooper that I have seen at the crime scene. And this isn't even a crime scene. This is the road. This is Union Hill Road. So this isn't even the crime scene. Now, just for clarification, not all states are like this. Some every state has a sheriff, right? You have a sheriff. It's an elected position. Every county has one. They have deputies. Deputies come out, deal with stuff that happens in the county outside of city limits. You have city police, things like that. Some states have state police or state troopers. Ohio has highway patrol troopers. Like in Kentucky, for example, Kentucky doesn't have state highway patrol, but they do have state troopers. They have Kentucky State Police, KSP. KSP sees everything from a traffic ticket to a murder. Ohio Highway Patrol doesn't do that. It is what happens on the road and what happens in the penitentiaries and jails and stuff. They oversee that as like a neutral party or something. That's it. That's all for that. Go to the next one.